So this was a really cool story that I stumbled across via Instagram, the airwaves on Instagram. It's via someone on Instagram called Immaculate Style. Definitely follow them if you're on Instagram. I think Immaculate Style does really, really good and poignant fashion news on Instagram and has like really cool takes. So Immaculate Style has this story where they're talking about fashion magazine editors hiring influencers as editors. Now, this is so interesting. It's so interesting because when I first started like my YouTube channel, I remember there were a lot of fashion journalists who were like becoming bloggers. And the reason why they were becoming bloggers and they were becoming influencers is because fashion journalism does not pay. It pays if you're a writer in a commercial sense. So if you're a fashion journalist that pivot into marketing or communications or copywriting, that's where the money is. But if you write for like you work for Vogue, you work for Harper's Bazaar, you work for Days, you work for ID as a writer, you're broke. Unless, of course, you're an editor, you're like one of the top editors, you're in a higher job. 9 times out of 10, you're broke. And I know that because I've had those jobs. So to supplement their income, a lot of journalists were like, well, I have all this expertise. I interview all these designers. I've built all these relationships with designers and business execs working for this company. Why don't I, start my social media page and kind of give insights and review stuff from my perspective? That's a more educated perspective than the perspectives usually online. And so you started to see a lot of magazines, like editors at magazines, become influencers. And there was so much friction because a lot of magazines didn't want their editors to do stuff on social media, because how they were seeing it is that time that you use on social media, you should use it doing research for other articles. And then it became a money situation where a lot of magazines wanted to start suing their employees because they were making the argument that, well, the reason why you make a lot of money is because you're using your association with the fact that you work with this brand to build your that you work for this magazine or this publication to build your profile, and then you're using that profile to then do brand deals. So we need to have a cut of your brand deal. So it all became messy, and it's so full circle that after all of that mess, now fashion magazines are actually hiring influencers as editors. Now, first of all, that's a disaster as far as journalism goes, because influencers are not fashion journalists. There are some people that overlap. Like, I'm a fashion journalist that happens to also have a YouTube channel. So I guess I'm a journalist and an influencer. So there's overlap there, but I'm actually traditionally trained as a journalist. Like, my degree is literally in journalism. But most influencers can't string a sentence together, talk less of actually writing, properly. And we're already saying that, writing is going down the drain. So fashion magazines just hiring any influencer as an editor, I think, is not the best way to go if you want, fashion to actually be covered in a very considered way. This gives me the same feeling as the scissor Vans thing. It's kind of similar. But let's look at the next slides. It was not long ago when fashion bloggers first started getting invited to fashion shows, which caused an uproar at the time. Many of those early bloggers went on to become accomplished writers and photographers themselves. Now we are at a point where major fashion magazines are actively recruiting influencers to join their editorial teams. I think that's still like a point of contention. You have the traditional journalists that are always like, I hate how like these influencers are being given the front row. There's like that kind of constant battle between the old guard and kind of like the new kids on the block that have like big social media pages and stuff. So I don't think that's actually changed. But reading from a business perspective, this shift makes perfect sense. Content creators bring built-in audiences while receiving a full-time salary and benefit in return for creating content and articles for the magazine. In many ways, they operate as businesses themselves, which makes them appealing hires for magazines that want to expand their reach for publication. The smart investment. I think it's definitely a smart investment depending on how they do it, right? So you have people like Lias. He was at, I think, Interview magazine, right? Now, the reason why it made sense with someone like Lias is with Lias, they got Lias in the capacity of making content, which he's so good at, and he gets views and he's like really good, and in the capacity of like doing interviews. So it worked like a treat. But then if they were to try and get an influencer that maybe doesn't come from a journalism background to be the next, I don't know, like Andre Leon Talley, obviously that's not going to work. So I think it depends on what they're using content creators for in their ecosystem. If they're using content creators to leverage their audience and leverage their expertise in content creation to kind of build the online platforms of these magazines, since fashion is going digital anyway, I think that makes a lot of sense. That definitely makes a lot of sense. But anyway, moving on, it says, in many ways, they operate as businesses themselves, which makes them appealing hires for magazines that want to expand their reach. For the publication, it's a smart investment. And one recent example is Christy Tyler, a popular fashion content creator who just announced today that she's joining Marie Claire as a contributing editor. Beyond her 425,000 Instagram followers, she also has over 3,000 Substack newsletter subscribers, what remains unclear is whether she will continue to publish independently on her Substack or if all her written work will now appear exclusively on the Marie Claire website. So Christy Tyler is a bit different because Christy Tyler actually writes. So that makes sense. Like, that's why I said there's certain influences that cross over where it makes way more sense. Christy Tyler actually makes sense. Like, that makes perfect sense to me. And the fact she has like a big Substack audience, like all of that makes a lot of sense. Margaret Zhang at Vogue China and Brian Boy at Perfect Magazine. Yes, perfect examples. Although I don't really, with Perfect Magazine, I don't even know what they do there. It's kind of like a dormant magazine and then they just pop out with a random thing once in a while. But yeah, definitely Margaret Zhang at Vogue China. And I'm a big fan of Margaret Zhang. Like, I really love her. So yeah, I think it depends on who. They just need to be very strategic on what influencers they tap. Industry contacts have told me that fashion magazines are increasingly reaching out to influencers with the right mix of skills in writing, video, and self-promotion. From a business perspective, this makes sense. Loyal readers and subscribers are likely to follow these creators to their new platform, which in these cases are legacy magazines. I think it makes sense because magazines are falling out of relevance. So in the digital age where print is dying, how do they stay relevant? And it's like, going to where the influence is and collaborating with the people that have the influence. And then they provide a platform. Because the weird thing about fashion, right, is that a lot of, like, I always say this, but a lot of people that work in fashion aren't good at their jobs, especially PR people. So a lot of PR people are not numbers people. They're not good with numbers. So they would rather like let's say like PRs, fashion PRs are so bad. Let's say Chanel is doing a campaign and the campaign is supposed to cater to like a Gen Z audience, right? The PR will just go to a magazine that they think is like big and then just give them a massive lump sum of cash, and then that publication will print a magazine that no one will read, and they post content online that no one watches. And if they just found interesting like independent fashion critics and like journalists and stuff that are big, so like someone like a Haute Le Mode, if they tapped a Haute Le Mode instead, Haute Le Mode would get like 1,000,000 times the ROI on that same campaign. Because PRs are so bad with their jobs, they just go with names. They don't even look at like, will we get the ROI? How many views do they get? What's the impact? What's their readership? What's their target demographic of the audience that this magazine is? They don't do any of that research. So they just they're like, yeah, we've worked with Vogue before. Just throw them a bunch of money. So it's kind of weird, but that's how like fashion PR is. It's very like mindless a lot of the time. So that's why you need magazines. That's why it's a symbiotic relationship, because I'm very sure someone who's an influencer and has a Substack and is doing all this stuff, they still don't have the access they need. So what the magazine gets is the audience, and then what the influencer gets in return is the access. And that access means a lot. I can tell you guys, when I worked at BOF, it was insane the amount of events I got invited to. The second I left BOF, I stopped getting invited to events. Literally, when I worked at BOF, I would get emails every day like, oh, please can you come to this event? Because obviously everyone wants you to cover their stuff in BOF. So I would be on the VIP list in every single event. I was always on the VIP list when I worked at BOF. So that is kind of the access that working at a legacy publication gives you. And that's not the kind of access that someone that just has like a lot of followers on social media has. So yeah, just wanted to provide some context as someone that works in that space. But yeah, next slide. Traditional publications are also helping their journalists adapt. The Wall Street Journal is currently in the process of hiring a talent coach to help its writers grow their own social media presence and market themselves more effectively. While this may seem promising, it can feel less organic and followers will quickly notice the difference. I totally agree. Like anything that's manufactured is no longer genuine. And the whole point of social media is it's supposed to be genuine. Like the reason why like you guys are tuning into this live stream is because I'm giving you my authentic thoughts. Like, can you imagine if like someone coached me? I was like, okay, you have to say this like this, and you could only say this, and you're not allowed to say this. It like you guys watching would be able to sense that I don't even have the freedom to say what I want to say. So that's dead. That's definitely a bad idea. Also, talent coach. Once again, who are these talent coaches? I need to look at the criteria for this talent coach job, because a lot of times, going back to a lot of people in fashion not being good at their job, no one should be teaching someone how to be a good writer and grow a social media presence if they don't have a big social media presence. There's always like, I don't know how these people get jobs. There are always like all these like social media coaches, and it's like, do you have a successful social media page? No. So why are you a coach? They're like, I just know the strategies. If you knew the strategies, why haven't you implemented that in your own life and on your own pages? So it's kind of, and in fashion, they always hire people like that. And I don't know why. Because there's a lot of times when I work at brands, like for luxury brands, and then in the social media department, there are people like that. And I'm like, why is this person here? They don't have a track record of like showing that they can actually build an audience. So how could they possibly coach someone on something they don't know how to do? It's really, really weird. Let me read this criteria. The Wall Street Journal is seeking a dynamic talent coach for a new development program focused on ensuring our journalists are equipped with cutting-edge skills in content creation and audience engagement. Reporting directly to the director of the Talent Lab, this role will be responsible for developing, delivering, and optimizing social media training and coaching for our journalists. A talent coach will equip our journalists with the skills and strategies needed to effectively build their personal brand, engage with audiences, amplify their work, and navigate the complexities of various social media platforms. You will design and continuously update comprehensive social media training modules and resources tailored to the needs of journalists, covering platforms like X, formerly Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, and emerging platforms. Provide personalized one-to-one coaching and lead group workshops for reporters on a range of social media topics, including developing a strong journalistic voice and personal brand outline, content strategy and creation for different platforms, text, images, and short form video, audience engagement, community building, and responding to comments. Where is like, I want to know what, I need to Google this because I want to know what they ask as like required experience. Wall Street Journal talent coach. I'm actually so curious because I just know it's going to be someone that shouldn't be working there. Okay, I think I found it. 1 second. Okay, let's see. Let's see. I knew. You see what I see? When I tell you people are bad at their jobs, read this, and I'm going to tell you why it doesn't make sense. Let me read it. So you have to have minimum of 5 years hands-on experience managing social media for a news organization, prominent journalist, or public figure with a strong understanding of journalistic ethics. Now, I don't need to tell you why that's already the wrong experience to have if you're going to. So explain this to me. You see why I tell you fashion people are terrible at their jobs? This is why it's easy to get jobs in fashion if you're good at your job, because most people don't know what they're doing. I'm being so honest with you. How is having experience managing social media pages for news organizations, prominent journalists, or public figures, how does that help you coach someone else on how to build their own personal brand? How? How does that make sense? The only way you know how to build a personal brand is if you've built one yourself. That's the only way. How can you teach someone to build their own personal brand when you have experience managing social media for an organization? Building social media for an individual and a personal brand is very different to building social media for the Wall Street Journal or building social media for business of fashion. Those are like two completely different things. Like, even down to, this is why I say people don't know what they're doing in fashion. Even down, they don't even know what they should be hiring. They don't even know like what the right experience to have for someone. Like, they don't even know what a good social media coach should look like. They don't even know. They don't even know. They said you have to have a minimum of 5 years of hands-on experience managing social media for a news organization, prominent journalist, or public figure with a strong like, how is someone that has managed the social media for a public figure, how can that person tell you how to build a personal brand? How? That makes no sense. That literally makes no sense. This is why, if you want to work in fashion, if you're watching this, just be good at your job. Just be good at your job, and you're better than like 90% of people that work in the industry, because most people don't know what they're doing. Like, I cannot tell you how many jobs I've been in that people don't know what they're doing, like completely clueless. Let's read on what they think they need for a good social media coach. Proven experience in developing and delivering effective training or coaching programs. So, do you know the problem with organizations? They treat everything like it's like everything that organizations do is too systematic. But the problem is social media is not systematic. Social media is like trends come and go really quickly, different things happen, and then as a result, like, because you never really know what goes viral, and then something goes viral, then you pivot. Like, oh god, companies are so clueless. They just don't have a clue. They're just so clueless. It's insane. They just don't know what they're doing. You can't be systematic with something like social media. Someone who is too systematic cannot be a good social media coach, because social media is not systematic that way. Like, companies always think that everything is like tech. They think we're going to build these systems out, and then we're going to build this framework of a system, and then using this system, we're going to teach our journalists how to grow their social media personal brand. Like, if you teach journalists to build their personal brand that way, they're going to build their personal brand in a robotic way, and no one's going to care, because they're not going to build their personal brand in a unique way. Like, let's read on. Let's read on. Deep expertise in current social media platforms like X, LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, etc., including their features, analytics, and best practices. Proficiency in creating compelling social media content, including strong writing, visual storytelling, basic video production, / editing skills for mobile. God. Excellent communication, presentation, and interpersonal skills with the ability to inspire and motivate others. Strong analytical skills to interpret social media data and provide actionable insights. Ability to work independently and collaboratively in a fast-paced environment. A passion for journalism and empowering reporters to succeed in the digital age. The position will be based in New York and reports to the director of the Talent Lab. To apply, please submit a resume and a cover letter that describes one element that you think is essential to building a journalistic voice. Jesus Christ. And the pay is 95 to 110K. So they are willing, bear this in mind, guys, they are willing to pay 95K to 100K to a person who's not right for the job. If you're going based on this criteria, like based on what the required experience is, this person here does not make a good social media coach. Like, what is highlighted here is not someone that makes a good social media coach. Someone that has experience managing social media of a news organization is completely irrelevant to what it's like to help someone build a personal brand. Completely irrelevant. If you're building social media for a prominent journalist or a public figure, it's still irrelevant, because it's not, you have to know how to build it for yourself, because there's things that you learn building your own personal brand that you can then use to help people build their own personal brand. Because someone like me, for example, I've helped so many people build their social media. There's so many people I've helped where their social media pages are way bigger than mine, because I give them even better strategies than mine. I just make content the way I make content because it's how I'm comfortable making content. But if the goal is like, do you want to get more views? I can help people with that, and I have done in the past. And I do it for free, by the way. People ask me for advice on Instagram, and I give them advice. And then 6 months later, it's like, oh my God, you've done really well. You literally have 100,000 followers on Instagram. Like, you can't, because when you're in the thick of it, when you're doing it yourself, you're in the thick of it. So you're like in real time, like doing it. You're creating the content, you're the brand, you're the personal brand, you're the voice, you're the script, you're the, like, doing social media for an organization, it's just not going to teach someone to have a personal brand. It just isn't. Because when you do social media for a public figure or you do social media for a news organization, it's everything is systematic. You're scheduling posts. That's not how you build a personal brand. How you build a personal brand is you say what's on your mind at that point in time. How you build a because it has to be genuine. It has to be authentic. Nothing is authentic when it's too systematic and it's come from this like weird system that this company has built. Why go to uni and study marketing and or journalism in 2025 if this is the criteria? Okay, so I'll tell you why. So because I did a journalism degree, and my English proficiency is very high, at least compared to the average person, which allows me like to be a better candidate in the workplace. This is why I say that a lot of people in fashion are not good at their jobs, because their English proficiency is like terrible. They don't know how to write properly. They can't string sentences together in a very like good way. They don't really know what they're doing. Even the people at the top, they don't know how to hire because they don't know who to hire, because they don't even know like what is actually needed, like as you can see from something like this on the screen. So when you study a degree, you have to look at, I don't look at degree as like I'm using the degree to get the job. I looked at my degree as I'm trying to learn a skill which makes me better at certain things. So right now, like I work in marketing. For people that don't know what I do outside of social media, I actually work in marketing for a luxury brand. That I can't tell you which luxury brand it is, but I work in marketing. So that's what it is. And I like oversee communications and language and marketing and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, that's the reason why you go to university to study. It's not because of like trying to meet the perfect requirements for a job on paper. But that's insane though, that they're about to pay this person 95 to 110k. That's outrageous. That is outrageous. If you're in New York, all of you watching, you guys should apply to this job. This job looks like a cakewalk with the experience that they're requiring. This job is definitely a cakewalk. I could literally apply to this job, but I won't, because the reason why I wouldn't apply to a job like this is because I would have to answer to what's this person? They said the director of talent lab. And if it's the director of talent lab that basically came up with this is what I think would make a good, social media coach, then I don't want to work under that person because that person is not good at their job. And I don't like working under people that are not good at their jobs, because what happens, I'll give you a good example. So there was a company that I used to work for, a really big fashion company, and I was hired as like an intern, basically. I was like literally earning minimum wage at the time. This is one of the first fashion jobs I've gotten. But I just so happened to be good at many different things because I just was a photographer before. So I had cameras and I like was good at taking photos. And because I was a photographer, I knew how to use Lightroom and Photoshop to edit. And then I also, because I used to design graphics, so I knew how to use InDesign. And then because I had a YouTube channel, I knew how to use Premiere Pro. So even though I was hired as a content creation intern, what then happens is you have bosses that they're the head of like content, but they don't even know how to use Photoshop, which to me is outrageous. How can you be head of content and you don't know how to do things that are required to make content? Really stupid. So what would then happen is any work that my boss gets, they would delegate to me. And because I was at the bottom of the totem pole, I was doing like 10 people's work because all my bosses just couldn't use the amount of software that I could use. Then you end up doing everyone's job, but then you're the person that's on minimum wage. And I'm too old now to be in that kind of situation. I would rather get paid less than be in that kind of situation. So that's why I wouldn't apply for a job like that. It's more to do with like my mental health, because I know how frustrating it would be. And it's not like I don't have an issue with authority. I like working for smart people. I don't like working for people I think are not intelligent. Like the job I'm in now, like I'm telling you, I work in marketing. Everyone I work with is super intelligent. So it's amazing. My job now is perfect because everyone is super intelligent. They're really smart, really sharp. I'm learning from them. I love it when I can learn from people that are above me. That's perfect, because why are you above me if I'm not learning from you, right? The worst case scenario is when I'm working under someone and that person is like really clueless and not intelligent. That's the worst. That's like a nightmare. That's a complete nightmare. So yeah, very, very interesting. This switch to journalists and journalists being trained to be influencers. Let's read the last slide. This is the reality of the current social media landscape. Readers increasingly prefer content from creators they feel connected to online, whether through Instagram, newsletters, or other platforms. By bringing these creators into their ranks, magazines instantly gain access to thousands of new readers and subscribers. Do you think this is a smart idea? Yeah, all in all, I think it's a smart idea for magazines to do this, to be honest. I definitely think it's very smart because, yeah, it's the digital age, print is dying. It's a way that they can stay relevant. And a lot of influencers are already experts at social media, which is why they're influencers. Like, they have big social media followings. So there's a lot that the publications can learn in terms of building their digital platforms. So yeah, I think it's a great idea. I want to see kind of how it rolls out. And I think as more people at magazines get hired and make hundreds of thousands of dollars, like the people are literally about to make, the pay range of this job at the Wall Street Journal is 95 to 110K. Cakewalk of a job. Cakewalk. I could do that job in my sleep. Like, that's crazy. Cakewalk of a job, and they're getting paid $110,000. So I wonder, as we see more like talent coaches like that in fashion, how journalists start to do their social media and like kind of, where we blur the lines between what is a journalist and what is an influencer and what does journalistic integrity mean in a world where every single journalist is going to be some form of influencer. Yeah, to be fair, yeah, 110K in New York City is not, it's a lot of money, but everything is relative, and New York is so expensive. It's kind of, with New York expenses, yeah, that's another thing. With New York expenses, it's crazy. It's crazy. A good time to announce my Substack. Do the exchange. What would that be in pounds? Let me Google it. So it's 81K, which the problem is you can't really compare because the cost of living in London is significantly less expensive than New York. So New York doesn't even have like real grocery stores. Like, every time I go to New York, I get pissed off grocery shopping because it's like, you guys don't really have any like real proper grocery stores. They're all like really small. You don't have those like humongous grocery stores where you just like go there and like all the prices are like really cool. They're like really nice prices. Everything's just so expensive in New York, down to like the groceries, to the rent. Everything is just unaffordable. So it's different. Like, I think 81K in the UK versus earning 110K in the US, you have insane disposable income if you're like a single person living alone in the UK, especially London, if you have 81K. Because London's expensive, but it's not New York expensive. And secondly, the reason why I wouldn't take the Wall Street Journal job is I make more money than that in my job now, by the way. So I would be taking a pay cut to work for someone that I think is probably doesn't know what they're doing. Why would I do that? That doesn't make any sense. Culture says I'd live in the UK in a heartbeat. The off license and free healthcare. That's true. Although free healthcare is not a flex in the UK because it's free, but it's difficult. It's free, but will you be able to see a doctor? Probably not. They might put you on a waiting list for 2 years. So yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. There's street markets and smaller shops in New York City. You need to put me on because I don't know where to find them. Every time I look, I can't find good grocery stores in New York. So yeah, I struggle with that a lot. I definitely struggle with that. I'm not the head of comms, so I'm the head of marketing, but I can't actually tell you until I'm allowed what the brand is. But I'm head of marketing, which encompasses communications too, to be fair. It does. Not someone calling me a sugar daddy. That's hilarious. Sugar daddy is insane. They're in Queens. There's an Aldi now. So that's why. Okay, next time in New York, I'd get tapped into that. That makes sense.